The Tech Leaders Toolbox podcast is brought to you by Paul Simkins and the Boldly Lead program, focusing on helping tech leaders like you end the frustration of low-performing teams and losing excellent employees so they can increase productivity by 50%, go home on time, and sleep better at nights.
Hello and welcome to the Tech Leaders Toolbox. I'm Paul Simkins, and we're here because how you lead today determines how your team succeeds tomorrow. And in case you have missed it, remember that you are definitely a leader, because leadership is all about the positive influence that you have. And how do you increase that positive influence? You do that by committing to grow and become better each and every day. Now, as if communication wasn't hard enough, now with the work from home environment and everything, we have to worry about trying to communicate with someone or a group of people when they're disconnected from they may be far away, they may be in the same town, but they're not in the same place with us. And even if you think you have a handle on it, if you're looking to grow, you know you can always be better. Lots of folks will give you a long list of the things to do to get better at remote communications. But today I'm going to give you just three secrets that are easy to remember, easy to apply. Are you ready? Let's go. Now, the first thing you need to remember about communicating remotely with people is just like communicating in person with them. There are three things you want to remember. First of all, trust is the foundation of all effective communications. You will not be able, if your goal in communications is to achieve understanding, and again, that's true no matter what it is you want to communicate, the goal is to achieve understanding. If your goal is to achieve understanding, that cannot happen unless trust exists. Unless the other person trusts that you are trying to completely get the point with them and be emphatic and that you care about what they are thinking and what they have to say, and you care enough to want to share something with them, unless they believe that, they're going to be closed off to you and it's not going to happen. And by the same token, if you don't trust that the other person earnestly wants to understand you, you will always operate from a point of frustration, anxiety, and that general air of distrust, which means that your voice, your tone, everything becomes very authoritarian. It becomes that simply just do as I say and don't question it. And again, just further erodes that trust. Understanding will not occur in those situations. You will not communicate effectively without trust. So that's the first thing to remember is your trust is the foundation for all effective communications to work. Now, I've talked about this before, and the other 2 points that I want to emphasize is consistency and constancy. Too many times what happens is that we pledge ourselves to communicating more effectively. I'm going to be a better communicator. We try it once and then we forget about it and we don't do it again for weeks or possibly even months at a time. And for our communication to be truly effective, we have to be consistent. We have to be consistent in the way that we communicate. We have to be consistent in the message that we're bringing. If you want to change your culture within your team, then whatever message helps convey that change in culture, you need to be exhibiting that consistently. You need to be sharing that message consistently with people. And I'll give you a real good example of that. An organization that was trying to change the way that their employees dealt with their clients, that instead of when a client said or customer said thank you, instead of saying you're welcome, they said my pleasure. And by the way, that's a great tip for you. My pleasure, it's hard to not come through that warmly. And so it's a great technique. So that's the change they were trying to make. So if they were to just say from now on, instead of saying thank you, say my pleasure, and then never said another word about it, well, it's not going to happen. because it hasn't been integrated into the minds of the employees. It hasn't been integrated into their habits yet, and it's not going to happen. So instead, what they did was, again, at the weekly employee staff meetings, they emphasized that, to say my pleasure instead of thank you. The leaders responded to thank you with my pleasure. They put up at every space where an employee was encountering a customer, they put up a little note reminder that just said, my pleasure. By being consistent in that message and constant in that message, they were able to integrate that into the minds of the employees so it became, and build it into their habits so it became automatic. The employee automatically responded with that as opposed to saying, you're welcome. And so that's a good example of how, again, consistent and constant are a key there. So with those things in mind, trust, consistency, and constancy, here are 3 secrets I want to share with you today. Because again, realistically, communicating remotely is not a lot different from communicating in person. The only thing really being 2 things that can possibly get in your way is, number one, the fact that they're not right there. So they're not exactly a captive audience. But the other is that if you're doing it through video teleconference, for example, if you're looking at this video right now, and I did do a video and an audio of this podcast session, if you're looking at the video, well, you only see me from about shoulders up. And so what you're not going to see is anything going on with my body from down below. So body language becomes a little easier, a little harder to pick up on when you're dealing in a remote environment like this. But beyond that, a lot of the communication is really the same. But so here are 3 things that I want you to, 3 secrets I want you to think about. They're easy to remember. They're easy to apply. And if you do apply them, and again, apply them with consistency and constancy, and you keep that trust factor up there, these will be effective for you to communicate with people remotely. And again, whether you're communicating to the whole group or communicating one-on-one. So the first thing is to think about asking questions. Spend a lot more time asking questions than you do telling people things, because you will discover a lot about people and about their individual situations when you're asking questions. So, for example, during a one-on-one with somebody, which again, we've said before, you should be doing a weekly one-on-one with every one of your employees that directly reports to you. So you want to dig. When you ask questions, you want to dig into what's really going on with them. So you don't want to start off with just, how are you? Or you do your one-on-one call and it's simply, well, how are you? How are things going? Because what you're going to get is the standard, fine, everything's fine, we're going great, right? You ask a vague question, you're going to get a vague answer. And so what you want to do is you want to actually ask questions that probe a little bit. So some of the examples of questions you want to ask is, you want to ask, what challenges are you facing right now? And notice the way I worded that. It's not, are you facing any challenges right now? Or how are your challenges? By saying, what challenges are you facing right now? The way I worded that insinuates that I expect that they are facing challenges and I want to know what they are. So by asking it that way, what challenges are you facing right now? You're setting the expectation that you know they're facing challenges and you'd like to know what they are. Along the same lines, the follow-up on that is, how are you planning to overcome that? So when they actually share what challenge that they're facing, how are you planning to overcome that? Hopefully that's something that they've thought about. They've got ideas. Rather than being the person who gives them solution, help them discover a solution. And so when you ask, how are you planning to overcome that? They've probably put some thought into it. and they can share what they were thinking about with that. And you can either confirm that, or you can ask more probing questions about their idea, maybe suggest even a little tweak to it that makes it a little bit better. And always when you do that, you go, that sounds great. Have you considered, and whatever little tweak or add in or aspect you want to explore with them on that. And then the last question you want to ask them is, where exactly will you need my help? Either today or this week, depending again on the situation. If you're doing daily one-on-ones, where exactly will you need my help today? If it's a weekly thing, where exactly will you need my help this week? And again, by saying, where exactly will you need my help this week, you are asking them for specifics, not a vague of, oh, I'll just be around in case I need you, or, you're making them think about it. You're again telling them exactly you are here to help. So where exactly can I help you? Now, again, if you're communicating to a group, a lot of the same kinds of probing questions. With your groups, some of the things you want to look at is, what are you celebrating right now? Go around the room, as it were, and what are you celebrating right now? And that can be personal, it can be professional. What are you working on this week? What help do you need from someone else on the team today or this week? So again, notice the way I asked that I expect they need help. What help do you need from someone else on the team today or this week? And then finally, what is something fun you're going to do this week? Now that seems a little bit off, but here's why I recommend you ask that question in your groups. What is something fun you're going to do this week? Because with all of the worry that a lot of managers had, that when everybody did the remote working and work from home, that there would be a drop in productivity and people would be slacking off and everything else. Research has found actually just the opposite. What's happening is, with everything else going on, the kids at home constantly, the homeschool, working, doing school from home, having to prepare a lot more meals because everybody's home and all that, what they have found is people actually are overworking. And so you're going to get people burning out. So you want to set the expectation and encourage your employees to take a little time out and relax and let off a little steam, or just do something other than working at something. So asking them, what's something fun you're going to do this week? Again, it sets that expectation, because next week they got to come up with an answer for you, right? It sets that expectation and encourages them that you're giving them license, as it were, to go ahead and take a little time for themselves. All right, so that's our first secret. First secret, ask questions, a lot of them. Next one, use all avenues of communication. Too many times, especially working remotely, we think about, a video conference, Zoom or whatever it is. A lot of people use WebEx, and by the way, if you don't know this, there's lots of video conference services out there other than just Zoom. Zoom is great. It's got some great features, but there's other avenues as well. But again, not everything, just because we're working remote, not everything is a video conference. That's not always the most effective way to communicate. And again, if you want to communicate consistency and constancy, then you have to use multiple avenues. So remember, don't forget your email. Don't forget, you can pick up a telephone anytime. We talk about this. One of my mentors, Steve Placey, who's a marketing mentor, and one of the things he talks about is, too many times, like trying to make an appointment with somebody, we do it through email and we go back and forth, or the big popular thing now is sharing a link to my calendar so you can just claim a time on my calendar. Then he's going like, what's wrong with a phone call? Pick up the phone, call them up and say, hey, right here and now, get your calendar out. Let's go ahead and set a date, right? Get it done in 5 minutes. Don't forget your telephone. Don't forget your email. Don't forget you have chat features. There's also third-party software out there that you can use. Salesforce has a communication add-on for chat and collaboration features. There's an app called SamePage out there you can use. Another one called Yammer. Slack is a big popular one right now. All of those avenues provide for communication and collaboration within them. And so again, if this looks like something you're going to be doing consistently going forward, you're probably going to want to look at investing in one of those applications. So remember, not everything has to be a video conference. In fact, again, a lot of studies are showing we're getting tired of video conferences. Studies have shown people are getting what they call Zoom burnout because everything now suddenly seems to be a video conference meeting. One other tip, though, when you do use video conferencing, actually show your face. Ask for everyone in the meeting to show their face. Again, probably part of it due to burnout, probably part of it due to the fact that right now, probably the background behind them is always a mess. Too many people are simply turning off their video for a video conference. But if you're going to have a video conference, you need to see faces. Otherwise, do a teleconference or some other avenue. And here's another thing to consider. Like we said, too many times, as I mentioned earlier, too many times we're overworking and everything, all of our interactions become just business, which is never a good thing. Think about including a weekly party meeting. Especially with everybody working remote, they can come up, they can fill up their glass with wine or beer or whatever they want, put on a flowered shirt or some kind of a fun shirt or something, and have a meeting where you just go around and talk about everything except for work. And it's just a fun meeting. And everybody enjoys themselves, and it's just a little bit of a party. And again, that helps build the camaraderie, it helps build the closeness. Because remember, our connections happen on a personal level, not on a business level. So especially with working remote, you want to create an avenue where people can still connect with one another. And having a weekly, like a party meeting or a celebration meeting, is a great way to do that. All right, so first two secrets so far: ask questions, use all avenues of communication. The last guideline I'm going to give you for today, the last secret I'm going to give you today, is to set guidelines for communication. Now, that doesn't mean come up with a hard and fast set of rules. I said guidelines for a reason. Guidelines are general guidance, but they're not hard and fast. You make a rule, people are going to apply the rule unless they have any other kind of input and unless they specifically have your permission to break the rules. By setting guidelines, you allow people to think about when the guideline should apply and when it wouldn't. And that's really what you want. You want people, especially working remotely, they've got to spend more time being able to think and reason and come up with conclusions of what they think is the best solution at the moment. So they're likely trying to master remote communications just as you are. Remember that. Keep that in mind. So work with your individuals, work with your teams to establish objectives for the week. And that's, again, part of that weekly meeting. Set your objectives for the week. Set your deadlines for when you expect things to be done. Don't spend your time monitoring when everybody is online and whether they're working. Learn to change your focus from hours to performance. If someone achieves every one of their objectives for the week, does it really matter whether they spent from 9 to 5 doing that? In most cases, it doesn't. Now, there are exceptions to that. I know a lot of government contractors have to strictly account for time. And you do what you have to do to fulfill a contract. But in most cases, it really doesn't. And so you don't focus on hours, focus on objectives and deadlines. Now, that being said, if you want to be able to have avenues, time periods where you know that you can reach somebody when they need to be reached, there's nothing wrong with having everyone set core hours when they will commit to being available for communication. And again, I wouldn't encourage you setting the standard of saying, okay, everybody must be online from 10 to 4. That's not always going to work. Again, with everything else going on, people's schedules, people are going to walk away. There's a core hour, you try to reach them, they're not available. Now, what do? Do you get on their case without really knowing why? That it may have been one of their kids running around in the background, tripped over something and hurt themselves, and they're having to deal with that. All kinds of things can get in the way. So try to encourage them to set core hours when you know they'll always be available to you. And it really only needs to be just, a couple of hours a day. Encourage that, setting those core hours, and along the same lines, communicating to you when that has to be changed. Hey, I know my core hours today are normally noon to 2, but however, I have to go do this. So I won't be available after 1. Okay, but I can be available a little bit later. Treat people like adults, they'll generally act like adults. That's the basic thing there. Language matters also, again, how you word things. So remember how you word things when you talk to people also then sets the example. They will follow that example. You'll hear a lot less confrontations, not necessarily a lot less conflict. Conflict's not a bad thing, but you'll hear a lot less confrontations and a lot more communication. Establish which mediums are appropriate and when they're appropriate. Realistically, everybody being on a video conference meeting all day long is really not appropriate. It eats too much bandwidth when they could be doing other things. They can't be on air, as it were, all day long. And remember, and again, as I said, it's never appropriate to ask them to be on video all day. And if you feel that your employees, it's such a saying that your employees have to be watched on video all day long, you've got bigger problems than when you're communicating with them. It's probably, again, goes back to that trust foundation. You got a trust problem to begin with, and you need to solve that first. So that's your 3 tips there. Again, 3 secrets: ask questions, use all avenues, and set guidelines. We'll be back in a moment.
While you're here, take a moment right now to subscribe to the Tech Leaders Toolbox podcast and leave a review. That way, you will always be up to date on the bold and innovative leadership principles we are sharing here. And come join the Tech Leaders Toolbox Facebook group as well, where you and other leaders discuss these concepts in more detail and we answer your questions. Subscribe today and share this with your friends.
All right, so now at this part in the show, again, I'm a big fan of outdoor cooking. I love all kinds of outdoor cooking because I do a lot of camping, so I can cook over an open fire. I do a lot of cooking with Dutch ovens. I have a smoker and a grill. So I love any kind of outdoor cooking that I can do. I've even actually cooked something in a hollowed out section of a stump, which was a pretty interesting thing to do. But I love outdoor cooking so much, I've actually created a Facebook group called Smoke and Ash. And the Smoke and Ash Facebook group, me and all of my friends join me out there. We share recipes with one another. We show off our cookers and share tips and tricks and so forth. And so I encourage you, if you like any kind of cooking or outdoor cooking, come join us on the Smoke and Ash Facebook group. And so during this portion of the show, I like to share an outdoor cooking recipe with everyone that you can easily adapt it for cooking indoors if you're not an outdoor cooker. But most of these are made for outdoor cooking. And this is the one I'm going to share today, This is a recipe for an appetizer, basically, and it's called pepperoni pizza dip. Now, I did not invent this recipe. I actually got this recipe from a little ebook called the Geezer's Cookbook, which was compiled by Dwayne Pritchett. The Geezer's Cookbook was a very popular ebook that has made the rounds with a lot of people in the scouting program, a lot of people who camp, because it is chock full of all kinds of recipes. And so again, this is a chip dip or a cracker dip that you can make for when you're camping. So you make this actually in a Dutch oven. And since it's a dip, what you need is you're going to need a number 6 or a number 8 Dutch oven. And you want a shallow Dutch oven as opposed to a deep Dutch oven, because the dip's not going to take up a lot of space there. Now, as an alternative, you can, cooking outdoors, you can cook this in a box oven and use a baking dish or a deep pie pan. And also, as along the same lines, you could cook it at home the same way. So here's the ingredients you're going to need for this pepperoni pizza dip. You need 2 packages of cream cheese, which you're going to let sit out and soften. You need a cup of sour cream. You need 2 teaspoons of oregano, a half a teaspoon of garlic powder. I tend to use a little bit more because I like garlic. A quarter teaspoon of dried crushed red pepper, a cup of whatever your favorite pizza sauce is, and then you need a cup of chopped pepperoni, a half a cup of chopped green onion, and 1 green pepper chopped up, and about a cup of shredded mozzarella cheese. If you want to vary it off of that, instead of mozzarella, you could use some other Italian blend or variation. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get a medium bowl. You're going to put your softened cream cheese in there, and then the sour cream, the oregano, the garlic powder, and the red pepper. And you're going to combine all of that with a fork or a whisk until it's thoroughly mixed. And then you're going to take a spatula and you're going to line your Dutch. I recommend to line your Dutch oven with either parchment paper or aluminum foil. For this particular recipe, parchment paper would be better. And you're going to spoon that cream cheese mixture out into the bottom of the Dutch oven and spread it out. Then you're going to take your pizza sauce and pour it over top of that, spread it out evenly, followed by the pepperoni, the green onion, the green pepper. Again, spread those out evenly. Top that with the cheese. Put the lid on the Dutch oven, and you want to bake it for about 10 to 15 minutes at 350 degrees. Now, if you're cooking outdoors, you're going to use coals on the Dutch oven, and you'll put about 8 coals underneath and about 12 to 14 coals on top. Of course, if you're baking this in an oven at home, you just set the oven to 350 degrees, again, 10 to 15 minutes. When you get done, you take it out, and again, if you use the liner, you just pull it out of the liner and it's ready to go. Serve it with crackers or crostini, and that's it. Pepperoni pizza dip. And you will be able to find that, by the way, that recipe out on the Smoke and Ash Facebook group, or just send me an email at tltoolbox@boldlylead.com. Well, this week we talked about some 3 secrets to better remote communication. And if you apply them, then you will go a long way towards improving how you communicate with your people who work from home. And that's about it that we have for this week. Until next time, go out and be the leader you were meant to be.